What we really talked about today is how can brands better engage with consumers using video, combining television and digital video to have a complete customer engagement experience. It's not enough anymore to simply use television as a mechanism where you're reaching an audience initially for brand goals and then you're trying to close them on search. Instead, we need to look at all the data that these consumers are giving us in their day-to-day interactions, how they're interacting with social networks, how they're communicating with the brand, how there's a two-way dialogue, and all those data signals that they're putting off. For example, things that I put off every day, like I'm a cyclist, a father, a food fanatic, a cook, but I also travel a lot on business and read 3 ebooks a month. I do other things in social networks as members of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of the other ones that exist through there. So these are all signals that I'm providing, but yet the experience that I get when I'm interacting with brands right now is really a one-size-fits-all experience in most cases. It's not integrated, and we still have all of the silos between each of these different channels, between television, between display advertising, between mobile, between video. We at Adobe see the real opportunity to pull all of that together, to unify that profile, and then to reach consumers with the right message, at the right time, but with customized experiences per channel. It shouldn't look exactly the same when you view a Super Bowl ad on a small iPhone as it does when you're viewing it on a 50-inch widescreen television. There's a lot of opportunities to think about multi-screen opportunities as we're all interacting now with many different devices on our day-to-day lives. So we think this is one of the biggest opportunities, and we really think about defining it as the personal self. Right now, when people think about the difference in brand buying versus direct response, they really think about the very top of the funnel. They think about large-scale brand awareness campaigns, and they think about the bottom of the funnel related to search. There is all of this in between, but as well, we typically think about different channels being good to address the consumer in each one of those areas. We really believe it's an integrated experience all the way through, where digital still plays a very large role at those top-of-funnel activities. We take a look at some of the Super Bowl campaigns from this year, and there are things that actually tied television and the ads that were created, for example, with the Doritos campaigns, back into social interactions and lower funnel activities which could actually be used all within the same campaign. So it's no longer taking a look at it's either this or that, it's how do we engage the consumer holistically. The way that they did it with Doritos is they went and actually said, we're going to create a microsite and we're going to allow consumers to generate content and share that, to promote it through the social networks and through other mechanisms, and for everyone to get excited to build buzz and to become brand advocates prior to the Super Bowl. At that point of the Super Bowl, no one knew which Doritos commercials were going to show, which ones won. So there was a lot of anticipation and buzz about that. The things that they did on the television side were still extremely effective, even if you didn't realize that they had done all of this leading up to it. But it created a much bigger story, both pre and post Super Bowl, and then starts tying that in so that you actually have the story becoming not the ads themselves, but the consumers and the way that they actually participated in that. They are the story that Doritos created, and they are what people are taking away from that brand experience. So I think when we think about it, and especially when we think about creating scale, because that's a question I get a lot. It's easy to do these one-off campaigns and to create a PowerPoint presentation about it and other things. How do I do this at scale? And as we were talking up on the stage, we really think about it as the first thing you have to do is understand all of those different channels and remove those boundaries between the silos. You need to understand what your user looks like across all of them, and then determine at what level of targeting you should do for television, what you should do for video, how those two should tie together and the interrelationships between there. So the first point is to consolidate the measurement. And based upon that, you can then take that back proactively and determine, how does this relate to my social campaign strategy? How do I want to buy mobile against it? How do I want to create applications or other custom content that's being generated? And how do I want to align that with my television buys? That's something that's not happening today, and it's not happening partially for technology reasons. There's too many vendors, and they're all fragmented, and it works through very different workflow. But as we talked about during the presentation, it's also because of organizational change management. The people who actually do the television promotion and the media buying are very different than the ones who are actually managing digital in either display or search channels. They're very different than the people who are running creative for each one of those independently. And then we take social and the new things that are emerging there, and it's completely different. These people do not talk to each other. So when we think about that, how do we make that a reality? Right now, we have different agencies, for instance, or different groups that all interact around buying television, around thinking about digital channels, and often multiple ones in each digital channel. And the question really is, should all of those be consolidated? I think it really starts internally within the organization with the CMO and with the teams there, where they need to bring digital and they need to bring traditional advertising together. And that's not just television and digital and video and all of those things. It's also the direct marketing groups that have those rich prospect CRM databases, again, tying all that together and creating a dialogue internally. Now, does that relate to actually consolidation of the agencies? Probably. Or probably through the campaign management and how we think about attribution or planning through there, yes. But I still think there's tons of room for the creativity and the specialty that actually comes out of developing a social campaign versus necessarily doing a TV buy. Those are unique skill sets, and they're probably going to continue to happen independently from an execution standpoint, but we have to consolidate the intelligence and we have to consolidate the planning around those strategic goals that are looking at it at a brand level, not with individual KPIs for each one of those channels. So when we think about those metrics of success, those KPIs, I think the question really is, do we need different metrics for how we actually view digital? Digital to date has typically relied on metrics which are very conversion driven. How many people clicked on something? How many people converted? Was it successful here or there? The reality is, especially as video is moving online and moving online through multiple different devices, it's a huge brand opportunity, and there needs to be new metrics created around that that are tying in engagement and looking at how can we take all the information we have to say this is what's happening and here's where it's successful further up funnel, and here's how we move those users down funnel and continue after they make that purchase to make them loyal customers. The loyalty marketing effort cannot be underestimated. Now, when we look at television, the question is, should we adopt GRP? Should we look at things that are basically reach and frequency associated with that? There's many people that think that's the case. And I think that there's some validity there. But again, television to date has been more of a one-size-fits-all. I generally understand this type of show on this type of network in this DMA is going to get me a certain audience, and then we move from there. I think the opportunity with digital, as everything becomes IP addressable, is to get much more granular in how we think about not only advertising and our campaign strategy, but also the content that we're serving back to those consumers. Again, it all needs to be about personalized experience and how we take that information and that rich information that consumers are providing us every day and stitch all of those signals together in order to actually give an integrated experience back to the consumer that is aligned with their needs and how they want to interact with our brands.
How do you see brands sort of balancing, or do you think they get the fact that there are trade-offs between, oh, you can help me reach, men who have kids who are cycling enthusiasts, which is hyper granular.
Yep.
But we want huge scale, so we're Campbell's soup, and we want our Hungry Man soup for targeting men and cyclists. So do they understand sort of the trade-offs?
Yeah. So one of the things that companies that are really getting into the space and wanting to make a large investment of digital, want to provide these personalized experiences, are asking us is, how do I do that at scale? Sure, I can actually say I'm going to target you because you're a cyclist and because you're a father and because you meet certain other demographic things around household income, etc. But all of a sudden, am I targeting 10 people? How do I come out as a Coca-Cola or a Campbell's Soup or someone like that and actually target a large group of people and to make those campaigns successful? The reality is that's something that we're still just figuring out, that we're still collecting the data associated with that. What we're seeing a lot is that you can do a better job of targeting while maintaining the reach so that your campaign is executed at a broad level, but then you're customizing the creative, which is being delivered at a micro level. So instead of having 1 or 2 versions of the creative, you have 20 to 30 versions of the creative that are customized to people's unique interests. In today's day and world, it's becoming much easier to execute those types of campaigns, and the lift that's coming from it is 300, 400, 500% higher than we do standard creative that's actually passed through, whether that's data targeted or not. So I think that's the big opportunity, and again, it's about making it easier to execute that type of campaign based upon all the fragmentation that we see in the market, especially on the digital side right now.
Do you see brands sort of hesitant to pour money into digital video because they have sort of brand safety issues around, like, is my content on some, you know, mega upload type site versus the New York Times?
Yeah.
So brand safety is the topic here.
Yeah. So when we think about people moving that money from linear television and moving that over into digital, one of the things that the brands are obviously concerned about is, how do I get that scale in online video, and also how do I have my brand protected? Because oftentimes there's still not the scale of reach that exists through those video channels right now. And as you start putting that out there, of course, I want my content and my advertisements associated with brands like a CNN or like an MTV or an ESPN, not necessarily with all of the other things that are out there. How do I control that? Again, this is something where two things are happening simultaneously. The first is the technology is becoming so much better on how can we actually filter that content and understand that. The second is what we're seeing is more and more video content being created by the publishers, where if we look 2-3 years back, there really was still an issue outside of certain channels like YouTube, et cetera, with the amount of content that existed. And now that problem is actually being removed. And what we're seeing in many cases with large publishers is we're actually seeing the same type of CPM and the same type of metrics that have been applied to traditional television advertising actually moving over to digital, and then being able to scale simultaneously. So it's certainly something we need to keep our eye on, and it's certainly something that makes sense, especially when we think about rich data targeting, but it's a problem that actually can be solved.